Reinvention is a natural part of the creative process, and mastery often looks like many lifetimes within one lifetime. Trusting the in between before the next version fully arrives. That's the practice.
Welcome to the Sound Body Initiative, a place for those who sense there's something deeper happening beneath the surface, and where lived experience meets between sound, body, and soul. Here we're talking creativity, consciousness, and real life inquiry, exploring what it actually means to be human right now. So slow down, tune in, and remember how connected we really are.
What's up again, beautiful creatures? Thanks for tuning in here with me today. And if you're tuning in via video, you can tell that the aesthetic here has slightly changed. A little bit of a life update. I am back in Pittsburgh for now, and things in the north are just a little darker and more antiqued. So I feel very regal sitting here in my wing-backed antique chair. And yeah, just adjusting to life in the north. It's a little chillier here, it's a little busier here, and I'm adapting. I am, it's taken me about a week to get my grounding, to kind of go with that flow, but I am adapting. And, that really had me thinking about this week's topic, which is around pivoting and listening to feedback. So let's just get right into it. You are hearing it from the queen of reinvention. I've been through so many different phases in my life, everything from, weird awkward theater kid, which I still kind of am, to being an elite hairstylist, a rock and roll rebel, a caretaker and a mama bear, eventually a sound healer, meditation practitioner, to an embodiment EDM dance goddess, and now business coach and talking head on the internet. So and, I'm still learning, I'm still growing, I'm still evolving. And, if anything, at this stage in my life, I am all of those things wrapped up into one. But the underlying purpose behind it all has always been to make the world a more beautiful place and to inspire and empower others to live the best version of themselves that they possibly can. So, as somebody who has undergone a lot of life changes in kind of a short amount of time, I've really reflected a lot on the notion of pivoting and listening to my internal feedback system. And I wanted to speak on this because I think a lot of creatives and a lot of entrepreneurs can get hung up on this. And it's when they stop pivoting and stop changing course that they become very rigid, and their businesses and their creative endeavors can become very stagnant because creativity, it dies in stagnation, So I really want to, I guess, just kind of highlight the pitfalls, so to speak, of becoming emotionally attached to one version of your success. And I may have touched on this a little bit in another episode, is that, being too tied to what your idea of success is, it doesn't leave any room for infinite possibility. So we constantly have to be, we always have to be growing. We have to be willing to change directions, if there's another course that opens up that's a path of least resistance, so to speak. So, as creatives, as conscious entrepreneurs, we can outgrow our environments very quickly, faster than most, because our minds, our spirits, our emotions, we're evolving a lot quicker than the rest of society. And that's a great thing. But what society has taught us, and what an egoic based culture has taught us, is to have this resistance to change, and this resistance to uncertainty, and that's where a lot of us can get caught up. I've definitely gotten caught up in that many times, because, we get stuck in these ideas that we were once so certain about. We were so sure in ourselves at one point that we forget that everything changes. Just because we knew who we were yesterday doesn't mean that we're not going to be a different person tomorrow. So, you know, we hate second guessing ourselves as creatives and entrepreneurs, but there's a fine line between, being certain of yourself and being willing to evolve. So what it comes down to is being able to adapt and change quickly enough to continue on your mission, because things are going to change every single day. The economy is constantly changing. People's perceptions are constantly changing. So as somebody who is on a mission to serve others, you have to be constantly adapting to that change that's happening in the world. So this idea of pivoting really requires letting go of old versions of yourself, old versions of reality, and making space for something new, for something that's more aligned. We talk about this a lot, alignment. And I don't want this to get confused with, just quitting because something gets hard, because there's a difference between quitting impulsively and pivoting intentionally. And you have to listen to the signs. They're subtle, because when something gets hard, of course, we want to, kind of get this idea that, it's not meant for us. But sometimes that can be an upper limit problem. So you really have to be aware of your internal and external reality and what's going on in your field. Really understand what your limitations are, what your ultimate goals are, and what it is that's worth sacrificing for, before you decide whether you are going to lay something down and let it go, or if you are going to stick with something and see it out to the end. And I think seeing something out to the end doesn't necessarily mean that you have to keep doing it the same way. Like I said, in all the iterations of myself, I have always had the same end goal in mind. And what I continue to do has never stopped pushing me towards that end goal, which is pretty abstract, you know, but the way in which I achieve that end goal has looked very different and continues to look different. So it's a fine line of listening to external feedback and your internal feedback. And I think feelings like burnout and overwhelm can be tricky to deal with, because we can become overwhelmed and burnt out when things get hard. And we can also feel overwhelmed and burnt out when we're making things hard on ourselves, if that makes sense. So, right now, for example, I have been getting a lot of positive feedback from doing these broadcasts, which I really appreciate. Thank you so much for your kind words and for your encouragement. But to be honest, with the balance of my life right now, my family, my art, my work, I have been feeling really burnt out. And, really the Sound Body Initiative is about optimizing our frequency and not stretching it to our limits. And so, you know, right now I'm in this place where I'm having to decide, is this another point in my path where I'm needing to pivot, and how can I continue on my path of achieving collective awakening alongside humanity, making the world a better place, helping people live to their fullest potential while also taking care of myself and making sure that I'm balanced and I'm not being stretched to my limits. So, just to be completely honest and vulnerable here, I don't actually know what that means for the Sound Body Initiative right now, at least, for these podcasts, because, straight up, my mom is dealing with some pretty heavy illness right now. And it's really progressive and it's really unsettling. And I'm struggling between what is my duty to others and what's my responsibility to, making sure that my family is taken care of, and what is the responsibility to taking care of myself and making sure that, I have what I need to sustain. So it's a really, really tough balance if anybody else is going through a similar situation, taking care of a sick family member or someone close to them, because we have to put ourselves first, because if we don't put ourselves first, we're not going to be able to take care of others. Yet there are times where we have to abandon certain expectations that we had in order to help somebody that we love and that we care about. So, not to get emotional, but yeah, I think this is really kind of a place where I am having to recognize my limits and decide how I want to move forward, because a lot of times we go against our intuition. Our minds are made up, and our minds tell us, well, we have to do this no matter what. But as life unfolds, we find these beautiful silver linings that if we had not taken the opportunity to change and go with the flow, we might miss the very blessings that are folded into those silver lines. So, that kind of leaves us with, what are we looking at here? What's working, what isn't? What feels good and what feels like it's being forced? I think for me, that is the biggest indicator of whether or not I should keep going with the plan, so to speak. Is does it feel like I'm flowing with this, or does it feel like I'm forcing it? And in that sensation, it's kind of just like making these little tweaks and these minor adjustments to, keep doing the work, but at the same time feel like you're in flow so that your mission can move quicker and it can move easier, and you'll see more abundant outcomes. So when we resist the change, often that's whenever things start to become less powerful, and we start to get frustrated, and we can really just start to bottleneck our progress. Going from making survival-based decisions to purpose-based decisions, it really takes practice, and it really takes self-trust and having the ability to tune into the world around you, because ultimately building something great is about service to others, and learning to follow energy instead of just opportunity. There's an importance of recognizing when your gifts are being diluted. We talked about that a little bit on the last episode, when we are stretched so thin and we're being forced to wear all of the hats and do all of the things because we think that this is the way that it's supposed to go. Oftentimes, our natural gifts, our most innate abilities, and the abilities that we have that will greatest serve the world, are being diluted because we're spreading ourselves too thin. So reinvention is a natural part of the creative process, and mastery often looks like many lifetimes within one lifetime. Trusting the in-between before the next version fully arrives. That's the practice. Because your most aligned work often comes after the collapse or the redirection. So detaching your worth from your productivity and your quote unquote consistency is essential, because we are human beings. Okay, reminder to myself, we are not human doings. And, there is this beautiful reflection of nature that comes through us. And like I said at the beginning, nature is constantly evolving, constantly expressing herself in new ways. So we really need to detach our worth from our productivity in order to create resilience and deeper wisdom within us. And it's as you are moving through, that transmutation, the path really begins to reveal itself. It starts to reveal itself through the movement. So that is why, of course, we pair these episodes with Sound Body Radio, because it is the movement that reveals the path. It is our feet that know the way. Because as we become more and more authentic, it naturally disrupts old structures. And in order to evolve into these new versions of ourselves, we have to move with it. We have to go with the motion. We have to open up the space, breathe, let the energy flow between ourselves. So your purpose may stay the same while the vehicle changes, but it is your curiosity and experimentation that is the driving force to the alignment of your evolution. Reinvention is just part of conscious leadership, and learning out loud is just part of being human. What if the things that are falling apart are actually just making space for something new? Last year, I hear a lot of people have coming to the same conclusions. The year of the snake was a great year of shedding. And when we let go of so much, we suddenly feel light. The weight isn't weighing us down. We don't feel stuck, and we just take off fast and strong. And a lot of us are taking off fast and strong right now. But my message to you is to stay grounded on your mission. And as you are beating those hoofs into the ground, feeling the wind in your hair, just remember that the path before you is always changing. And if there comes a sharp turn in the road, you need to stay on your toes. You need to stay agile. You need to stay adaptable so you don't run off a cliff. The most magnetic people are usually the ones who are brave enough to evolve publicly, to show themselves authentically. So with that, leave you this week. May you be authentic, shiny, magnetic, beautiful soul. May you achieve all your dreams and ambitions, no matter what they look like, no matter what iteration of yourself achieves those. And until next time, my friends, keep up the light.
What's up, conscious creator? If you're ready to give back to your body in the same way that it gives back to you, I highly recommend checking out my website at sound-body.org, where you can find more music resources and integrative products that increase your capacity for living well. And if you love to dance and you're ready to receive these transmissions through your own sound body, don't forget to listen to this week's mix as Sound Body Radio. You can find me on YouTube at JRio Music or SoundCloud at Jessica Rio Music, or simply by searching Sound Body Radio. As always, your support doesn't just feed me as an independent creator, but it helps those around you find their path back to their higher calling. So, thanks for listening, and remember, keep up the light.